Easier up from this point, but the offseason's left us with a bunch of question marks. But joining us to discuss more about that, because I want to know what's happening in the building with the Las Vegas Raiders. Potential number one overall pick, is it Fernando Mendoza? What's the question mark on Maxx Crosby? So to join us, host of Bleav in Raiders and broadcaster Dennis Ackerman is going to join us here. So, Dennis, let's start off with how we started the season. So beforehand, Pete Carroll comes into the building. My biggest takeaway on it before the season started was I was happy because it felt like a grown-up was going to be coming into this building, structurizing and trying to build consistency. The only thing that became a cautionary tale was Chip Kelly as the offensive coordinator, because it felt a lot like how we felt about the Chargers when they hired Jim Harbaugh. Great hire, but then Greg Roman comes around the corner. And I thought when we started the season, it would have been like a 9-8, 8-9 season, but it was competitive enough because I'm seeing growth. Unfortunately, that hasn't been the case, but that doesn't mean that right now, potentially a number one overall pick and what the future holds for them. And they've also got the top 3 best cap space spending for next year. So talk to me. What was it that was going through your head before the season started and where we are today? Some takeaways, pros and cons. Like what did you make of it for this season?
Okay, so let's go back to the beginning. They hire Pete Carroll, and I got to be honest with you. I'm thinking this is the best Raiders head coach since probably John Gruden 1.0 back in the late 90s. I mean, obviously, Pete's track record speaks for itself. The Super Bowls with the Seattle Seahawks, the national championships with USC, been a head coach also at New England and with the New York Jets. So I'm thinking, okay, I know he's 74. He doesn't act like he's 74. The Raiders finally got their right head coach. They're going in the right direction. Hey, we got to solve the quarterback situation. Let's trade for Geno Smith. Okay, I like that. He's going to solidify it. It's been a mess since they let Derek Carr go the final 2 games of a season a couple of years ago. Last year, I think they went through 4 quarterbacks, Aiden O'Connell, Desmond Ridder, the list goes on. Jimmy Garoppolo, they've tried. It's gone on and on. So Geno comes in. We trade a 3rd-round pick for him. Okay, let's give him a 2-year deal. Great. We finally figured we got some validity, a solid foundation with our head coach and the quarterback. Hey, Ashton Jetty's the 6th pick in the draft. Love him at Boise State. I'm like, this is a great pick. Love it. We're going in the right direction. With that being said, I went through the roster and the schedule. I'm like, okay, even though we have some pieces, I still think it's a 7-win team at best. A very difficult schedule. But Pete comes in talking like, oh, man, we're going to compete right away. This is not going to be a rebuild. We've got a lot of talent on this roster. We're going after it right now. I want to win. Of course, he's going to say that he's 74 years old. He doesn't want to be part of a rebuild. What's he going to be, 78 by the time that happens? John Spytek, first-year general manager, handpicked by Tom Brady, kind of had a different vision. We're going to be bargain basement spending in free agency, and unfortunately, that's the part that has come to fruition. And I think the big problem was also the Raiders beat the New England Patriots. Still can't figure out how they did that in week 1. They beat the New England Patriots in week 1. So now expectations are sky high. But then they slowly start to come down to what is really happening. The offensive line is worse than what we thought. Colton Miller gets hurt. He's their best offensive lineman. Jackson Powers-Johnson, for some reason, he was the starting center last year. Now all of a sudden he's in a position battle. They move him to guard. He can't stay healthy. And it's been one of the worst offensive lines in all of football. I say them and probably the Tennessee Titans. They can't run block for Ashton Jeanty. Everybody's saying Genty's not having a good year. Well, I think on 50% of his carries, he's either been hit behind the line of scrimmage or at the line of scrimmage. Geno Smith leads the NFL in interceptions. I can't put it all on him, but I'm definitely going to put it some on him as the offensive line cannot pass protect. And sometimes I think Geno is just seeing ghosts out there, forcing throws, late on throws, and just the defense just does not have talent. It's just a lack of talent. Not only the defense, from top to bottom. There is literally probably 5 or 6 guys that you could keep on this roster. Everyone else you can replace. And that's why I'm thinking to myself, okay, yes, they need a quarterback. They've been trying to solve this quarterback situation for a long time. You need to stockpile picks because there's just a lack of talent, overall talent on this roster. You're probably looking I know some head coaches have been able to come in and take a look at Washington last year with Jaden Daniels with a rookie quarterback, Liam Cohen, a first-year head coach. Look at the Jacksonville Jaguars, but they at least had Trevor Lawrence. The Raiders don't have that. I'm guessing it's a 3-year build. Who's ever at the helm next year and who's ever quarterback in the silver and black in 2026.
And it's crazy because I was thinking the same exact thing because, to me, at least about a good half, if not even more, of my family members are Raider fans.
Okay.
And I've always heard about, when you're a Raider for life.
Right.
There was the old school, like the traditional mentality. I see this with Pittsburgh. I see this with Chicago.
Right.
And the only difference is Chicago was able to turn the page of what did not work for them, used to work for them years ago when we had those 1940s, 50s televisions. And now they're like, we need to get better at offense. So yes. Ben Johnson comes in. He beefs up the O-line. Liam Cohen, what's crazy about it is I still can't figure out Jacksonville.
I can't either.
And yet he somehow makes it work. Trevor Lawrence in the last couple of weeks hasn't been throwing picks. He's been throwing more touchdowns. They've been figuring it out. May not look pretty, but it's better. And they're a better team. So I feel as though for the Raiders, for years and years, even when I watched as a kid, it's like I don't see any stability. I don't see a culture structure. And listen, coming into my old hometown in Vegas, I know it's difficult because, number one, you're trying to convince a lot of these new fans that you're trying to build upon and sell because you got a team who's been to the Stanley Cup, won it once, and you got another one who's won 3 WNBA championships, and then trying to convince, hey, we can win a Super Bowl. We can compete Europe for the playoffs. But it's like you really have to think about on the interior side from the upper level all the way to the coaching staff. And then, of course, the key players. So my takeaway is, when I look at, too, with what's happening with Maxx Crosby, I mean, they shut him down for the year. He walks out of the facility, and I understand as an athlete, you don't want to go down like that. You want to compete. I love the fire in this belly, but there just hasn't been anything that's convinced me this culture and this looks healthy. It seems like there's still some more pieces. So when you think about that, it has to start with the star players and then eventually work that way to building and structurizing a culture to where it is turning in the right direction.
Well, I think it actually starts at the top with Mark Davis. And ever since he inherited team from his father in 2011, I mean, it's just been a revolving door at the head coaching position. I mean, you want to take it even further back since 2002, the last time the Raiders were in the Super Bowl, they've made the playoffs twice. Yeah. That's it. And both times it was under Mark Davis as the owner. But since he's taken over, I mean, you're probably looking at their third head coach in 3 years under Mark Davis. And I don't think he gets enough blame the way he goes through coaches and general managers. I really would. I had Pete Carroll's back until probably the Philadelphia game when they lost again by a score of 31-0. Once again, for the second time this year, they gained less than 100 yards of total offense. They're just not competitive. They're not competing. They're down double digits constantly. The offense can't move the ball. The defense can't get off the field on third down, and the offense is even worse on third down. So it's just a combination of things. Now, you might say, okay, how much influence does Tom Brady really have? Well, we don't know. He's not in that building every day because he's the lead analyst for NFL on Fox. Is he looking at it from afar? How much influence does he have? Maybe he has a lot. Maybe he has a little bit. We don't know. I mean, I know he had an influence on John Spytek becoming the general manager because it was Tampa Bay the same time Tom was there. But I just think it begins at ownership, works its way down through the front office. And then you mentioned Maxx Crosby. Now, Max is probably loyal to a fault. He's 29 years old. He is one of the top defensive ends in all of football. And I know Myles Garrett could potentially set the sack record this weekend, but sometimes I think Max might be better all around because I believe he leads the NFL in tackles for loss. So not only can he rush the quarterback, he plays the run exceptionally well. But Max has only made the playoffs once since he's been with the Raiders. He's a 5-time Pro Bowler. I know it doesn't mean what it did as a Pro Bowler, but still, just to be named does still have a little cachet. Is Max, like I said, is he loyal to a fault? I think he is. He says he still wants to be there, but then when they tell him to go home for the final 2 games, when you're basically in a tank situation, let's call it what it is. They want the number 1 pick for whoever that might be. I'm pretty sure they're hoping it is a quarterback. But, you know, Is Maxx going to be back? I don't know. What could he fetch you in return? I've said there's a lack of talent on this roster. Could he? I think the starting point would be 2 number ones. Do I think you could get that? No. But I think maybe that's where you start. Hey, you want Maxx? This is the kind of player he is. Let's start here and let's see what we can get in return for him. Because I'm looking at Mendoza, the quarterback from Indiana. I'm like, am I really sold on him? I don't know. Dante Moore, I'm very skeptical of one-year starting quarterbacks in college football. I really am. So those are probably the 2 top quarterbacks. If they come out, we don't even know if they are, because look how good the NIL money is in college.
Yeah.
They could go back. So who is going to be available if the Raiders secure that number 1 pick? I don't know. But so that's kind of, where we're at with ownership, management, lack of players. Who's going to be the head coach? I mean, there's just so many moving parts, so many question marks around this franchise.
Agreed. And I'll tell you what, because I'll tell you in the last question, because I want to pick your brain at this of a pitch that I may give you that might just help, for the ownership. So my big thing is I feel like there's a symmetrical line, because it feels like to me the Raiders and the Steelers kind of seem like they're dealing with similar issues. Only difference is I think Pittsburgh, they've been a proud organization, winning above 500. However, look at the way the defense is played. And look at the lack of talent on the offense. I've said beginning of the season, I said the one thing that you're going to regret is Pittsburgh not trading away TJ Watt to get an overhaul of picks where you could then get maybe Abdul Carter over the Giants and fix that O-line, get a star running back, and then get another receiver. Because if you're going to buy into Aaron Rodgers coming here, the one thing I want to see is some competencies on some offensive positions, because then, that defense, it's funny. You look at how young that Rams defense is, but those guys haven't been paid yet. So you're utilizing their age, their juice, all that until payday comes up. So I feel there's maybe a little bit of a symmetrical line between them and the Raiders, because it's like with Maxx Crosby, you're sitting there and you're thinking, if we go into this draft, I would love to have an overhaul to where I could reshape an entire structure of a roster, because JPJ and Colton Miller are my only 2 offensive linemen. I need more. And then on top of it, you already got a flashy running back. He's guaranteed to be good as long as he sticks to what works with him. I didn't understand the whole stance changed. I felt like, look, what's worked in Boise, keep it. He's going to be fine. Then go and get yourself maybe another receiver along the line. And because you already got a great dual threat of tight ends between Bowers and Mayer.
Yes.
So, is that kind of something that feels a little bit logical in this regard? Because again, I get loyalty. I really, really do. Loyal to the Shield. But sometimes I got to think of, dude, 20 years of toxicity, I can't do this no more. I need something that's healthier. What do you make?
No, I agree. I look at the Steelers. Here's the difference: is the Steelers are winning. They might not be winning playoff games, but they're finishing above 500 every year with Mike Tomlin. If I'm a Raider fan, hey, where do I sign up for that? 2 winning seasons since 2002. But yeah, look, would it be difficult to deal Maxx Crosby? Absolutely. Like I said, he's one of the top edge rushers. He's a warrior. Everything you want in a football player. He plays hurt. He never takes plays off. He doesn't want to come out one single snap of the game. So yeah, I do get it. Would it be tough to see him go somewhere else? Yeah, but at the same time, you know what, Maxx, you're 29. Go somewhere where maybe you could win a Super Bowl. You put up with so much on this organization through off the field issues, coaching changes, ownership, front office, just so much off the field that you have dealt with besides the losing on the field. Let us do you right. Maybe tell us what teams you might be interested in, see what we can get back in return, and let's go for that full rebuild. What I hate to see him go, yes, but I also do right by him, and maybe you could quicken up this rebuild in terms of what you could get back. Now, look, we all know the draft is a crapshoot, right?
Yeah.
I was trying to go over my head. I'm like, who was the last the last quarterback taken number 1 overall to win a Super Bowl? And I'm like, do you have to go back to Eli?
Yeah.
Does that sound right?
It sounds about right. Yeah. The number 1 quarterback, last one to win the Super Bowl, at least as a number 1 overall pick. And a lot of them have either have won with their respective team they drafted with, or they won somewhere else.
Right. And I look at a Baker Mayfield. He's on his 3rd or 4th team. I look at it, I know Sam Darnold wasn't a top pick, but he's on his 3rd or 4th team. And I'm like, okay, I know this Raiders are
I mean,
so
Jared
desperate.
Goff to get into a Super
Exactly.
Bowl in the first year. Yeah.
Yeah. I know, or probably actually Matthew Stafford now might be the last number one.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but
Yep.
anyways, but my point is, I mean, the fan base is so desperate for hope at the quarterback position in particular. Let's just take Mendoza. Maybe he's not ready. Maybe he is, but let's just have hope. And I think that's what the fan base is looking for. Just some ray of hope, because you know what? In the last 2 years, they're going to win a combined 6 games. 6.
Yeah.
Some teams are going to win 13 games this year, and the Raiders have won 6 combined games in the last 2 years. There's just no hope right now for this fan base.
So, in talking about that, because to me, so this is where it's going to start up before it leads to this question is,
okay.
So you have Geno Smith for the right now. That was what the contract was about. So in comes the number 1 overall pick, and Fernando Mendoza, like number 1, he's got the size and the height. And the only thing I question about is, and I'm going to watch this, especially in the college football playoff, because you're going to be facing against an Alabama team who we know in SEC, they know exactly what the standard is. They know how to run it. And for Indiana, they've had a fantastic year. I mean, it was a great 2-year turnaround for a basketball program that finally is finding its relevancy. But I still question about, with Mendoza, is he the guy that I feel when you put him in that pocket, can he obviously stick to on script? You get the check downs, the dump offs, but then can he also ad lib where he could take matters into his own hands, get the first downs? Now, obviously, where you land does matter. So when you're coming into an environment like the Raiders, who are still needing a lot of stuff done here, I mean, is that going to be, like you mentioned, is this the hopeful pick? You'd hope so. But if it doesn't seem to be, is that more of just, we need more talent in this roster. We need to get more consistency in order to see the best version of Fernando Mendoza. What do you think?
Well, look, if you were going to take Fernando Mendoza with the first overall pick, you have got to shore up that offensive line, because I don't care who's back there playing quarterback. There is no way anybody is going to succeed with the way this offensive line is currently constructed. I remember when Bill Polian was a general manager of the Indianapolis Colts, they took Peyton Manning with the first overall pick. The number one thing they did was secure that offensive line, because they didn't want him getting beat up. And then you take a look, with that same franchise 10, 15 years later, Andrew Luck, they couldn't protect him, and he retires early because he was just getting beat up and didn't want anymore. So that's your first priority. If Mendoza is the pick, okay. You've got, like you said, 2 very good tight ends. You've got Ashton Jeanty. Okay, there's some weapons there, but I have to be able to protect him. And that's going to start with the offensive line, because I'm just going to say Colton Miller's back at left tackle. I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt he's healthy. Jackson Powers Johnson, I think he should be at center, so I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. He's back at center. So you're looking now minimum of 3 new offensive linemen. That's what they have to do, a minimum of 3. Okay. Do we have a legitimate number 1 wide receiver? No, we don't. Trey Tucker is their best wide receiver. He should be a number 3 at best. At best. Got a couple of young guys they're trying to work in here late. So a wide receiver is another position that they're going to have to upgrade. Now, okay, on the podcast, former Raider cornerback Stanford Route does it with me. Played 8 years in the NFL. And he always says this. He goes, Dennis, if I'm a coach, my quarterback is sit. My rookie quarterback, I don't care where he's taken, I want him to sit for a year and learn the game, because it's so different in college. It's so different. It is night and day. The speed of the game, how I have to process things. Now, with that being said, I don't think there's any way you could sell to the fan base bringing back Geno Smith after the disaster he has been here in 2025. As we talked about, leading the NFL in interceptions. He's taken a beating. He's taken a beating both mentally and physically. You can see it on his face, his expressions, his reaction. He's not going to even play in the season finale. Kenny Pickett will be getting the start. Geno not only getting beat by the Giants, he was also beaten down and injured at the end of that game as well. So Kenny Pickett will be the starting quarterback. So Aiden O'Connell's still on the roster. We've seen him as a part-time starter the last couple of years. Okay, do you go Aiden O'Connell? Maybe it's one of those things. Aiden O'Connell's a starter. Give him a handful of games. See what he can do. Okay, midway through the season, you're 2-6, 3-5. Let's see what Mendoza could do. Could I see them going in that direction? Absolutely. Kenny Pickett, is he back? I'm not so sure. Quite possibly. He's only had 1 start. He'll get his next start here on Sunday. Let's see what he can do. It was a disaster against Philadelphia, but I don't put it all on him because we talked about the O-line and just the overall lack of talent. So I don't think Geno's back. If the pick is Mendoza, that's what you have to do to surround him, at least talent-wise, offensively. And if you're going to maybe sit him for a year, is it Aiden O'Connell? Is it maybe Kenny Pickett? I don't know. But that's how, and it's just me on the outside looking in, that's how I would approach 2026 if I'm the Raiders.
So here's a proposal of mine before the last question here. And so I understand it. To me personally, life's a lot better when you got a franchise quarterback.
Yes.
You watch all the teams right now. I mean, Bo Nix in Denver with Sean Payton, they're now the AFC West champions after decrowning the Chiefs. Similar style, Mahomes and Reed, Herbert and Harbaugh. It's matches made in heaven. But it's like for the Raiders, first they got to get the coach, and then they got to get the whole entire system right. So here's what I would have proposed. I'm not opposed to drafting Fernando Mendoza. I think he's a really good kid. I hope he is the answer that can help to solve the problems. But here's what I'm looking at. Because I'm looking at the Maxx Crosby situation. And then I'm looking at the number 1 overall pick. To me, what I feel, if I'm in the GM's shoes, our offensive line is not completely solidified. We have got to get more talented offensive linemen, whether it's in free agency with the money we have, and then the draft picks to build this for the 2-3 year pact, because these guys are going to come into their own and gel and mesh by year 3 at best. My big thing is, if you could trade this pick and get the top offensive lineman in the interiors more than anything, and work to maybe get a veteran tackle in the free agent market, I can then solidify and maybe bring in somebody like on a prove it deal. Like, for example, Evan Neal. Can somebody come in into the prove it and be a part of this group and keep stacking the lines? Whereas then I can go and get a couple defensive players, young, use the juice, because here's where I'm going with this. You've seen with the next year draft class. And in my opinion here, Dennis, I have been vouching for this kid the minute he stepped foot in Oklahoma. And I feel like Bo Nix, Justin Herbert, and Patrick Mahomes, they all are mobile out of the pocket. They all are accurate with the simple stuff and the ad lib. Why not? Who would be opposed to maybe potentially fixing up that O-line and then greeting in someone like John Mateer?
Okay, and that's interesting you bring that up, because I just recorded a podcast and I was saying the same thing. What if you decided there's another team that fell in love with this number 1 overall pick, and you could add more draft capital? Mm-hmm. You could maybe trade back to 3. Maybe Cleveland wants to come up. I don't know. Maybe the New York Jets want to come up. I don't know. Maybe there's another team we're not even thinking about that wants to land in that number 1 spot. I don't know. But I kind of said to you, why not stockpile more picks? But the problem with that is the Raiders quarterback situation has been so bad since probably 2022. Josh McDaniels and all his brilliance decided Derek Carr's not my guy. I don't want you playing the last 2 games. Go home. Mm-hmm. Since then it's been Jimmy Garoppolo. I mean, they have tried Gardner Minshew, Aiden O'Connell, Desmond Ridder got a start. I mean, it's just been a revolving door. They thought they had it solved with Geno. Mm-hmm. Honestly, he might be the worst of the bunch, believe it or not. So I do like that strategy, but I'm just afraid it's just not going. I don't know how you sell that to the fan base after everything that they've been going through since they went through Josh McDaniels, Antonio Pierce, and now it looks like Pete Carroll's not going to be back either. So you're going to be on your 4th head coach. It's just, I do like it, but I don't know how you sell that to a fan base. And look that you turn on a Raider game now, 50% of that stadium is visiting colors. There's no home field advantage. It's one of the worst home field advantages in the NFL. I've been there. I don't even like it. It's a dome. First of all, I don't like dome stadiums. I don't want to go indoors. The only saving grace is it's grass. I'm old school, but there's no home field advantage there anymore. I know Mark Davis got the stadium he wanted. I know it's glitzy, it's glamorous, it's Vegas, it's all that. There's no home field advantage. If you had a chance to take Mendoza and you traded back in the draft and didn't take a quarterback this year, it just wouldn't go over well. It just wouldn't. There's no way you could sell that to the fan base at this point. Just because of what they've gone through the last 4 or 5 years.
Yeah. Oh, I agree. And my biggest thing is to me, 65% of the league whiff on franchise quarterbacks.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
That's what's the hardest part. So to me is that like, then this is the last question, which might get interesting, because I watched Andy Reid be blessed with Patrick Mahomes, because even though with Alex Smith, they had the next young heir in line that took him to Super Bowls, won some. Then you watch Herbert get beaten and battered, and only with two coaches, with Anthony Lynn and Brandon Staley, until Jim Harbaugh arrives, and he's turned around this organization and has built Herbert in a mentality to just win in all costs. Then there's Sean Payton, who has dealt with such bad cap in New Orleans, and then he comes in after the Russell Wilson contract and turns around Denver, and then potentially we could see them as the number 1 seed. So the reason I say this is because, depending on what happens this last week, there's potentiality that if Miami does not get it right and well, and McDaniel isn't part of their future, they're hanging on for the moment. But if he ends up leaving, I could see offensive-minded coach get the smart offensive-minded coordinator, work that up, and turn the things around, because I want to build consistency. And then when I bring in the next quarterback in, I mean, you're watching it. Kansas City fell off. Chargers and the Broncos took big steps up. And so I'm like, there's a shakeup in the AFC West. Why can't the Raiders maybe potentially be in that spot? So if you imagine that, depending on what happens with Pete Carroll, but you get someone like this in the building, who's with the times, understands the X's and O's, but also knows how to bring a winning culture back into this building, that might buy into some of the Raider fans. Some, not all, but as long as they could see the results are changing.
Yeah, I think it's all about culture, and that's what they need to see. They need to see, like you said, a ray of hope. Maybe the culture is changing, and maybe get a couple of wins, more than 4 in a season, maybe 2 in a season. McDaniel's an interesting name to me. I really hadn't thought about him much. I thought of more a Clint Kubiak, an offensive coordinator, maybe marrying him with a young quarterback. The only thing I would say against McDaniel, and he's quirky in his own right, is Tua Tagovailoa. Has he really gotten better under McDaniel? That would be my only question mark. He was fantastic with the 49ers, but how much of that was Kyle Shanahan? Because I think we can make the case Kyle might be the best play caller in the NFL. I mean, what he's doing with that 49ers team is remarkable. Maybe coach of the year. We'll see if they get the number 1 overall seed. Yeah, you're going to need to bring in somebody who can change the culture, because, look, you just mentioned so many great names, great coaches alone in the AFC West. I mean, Sean Payton, Super Bowl winner. Jim Harbaugh hasn't won the Super Bowl, but he's been there. He's won a national championship at Michigan. Everywhere he's gone, he's turned things around. He did it 1 year, with the Chargers. And then, of course, Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes, that speaks for itself. That's one of the great, I guess you can call it a dynasty for what it is. But, I mean, so look at it. It's a very difficult division. I know Kansas City's down. They might be in a little bit of transition. But, Denver with a young Bo Nix, Justin Herbert's one of the top quarterbacks in the NFL. So I know the NFL changes from year to year, but you got to right now look at the Chargers and the Broncos. Okay, maybe this is the new class of the AFC West. How long is it going to take Andy Reid to turn things around in Kansas City? And then you're looking at the Raiders. So I don't know how attractive the Raiders' job is right now. Maybe with the number 1 pick, it becomes attractive. Maybe it does. I don't know. But based on what the roster looks like, I don't think it is. But depending on where you're drafting, perhaps it could be.
Absolutely. And of course, the people you bring in the building, and how the players, they buy into that, because that's ultimately what it is. You got to buy the players in. So yeah, I think it could be interesting. You may be right. And depending on what John Spidek ends up doing, because I'd love to see what he does in the offseason. If you bring in the right culture players and guys that are going to be coming in improvements, guys that have been here that want to reshape what right now seems broken, but doesn't mean it cannot be revived, then that's where I think you'll then buy into that and say, you know what, we got the right guy, and he's going to love being a part of this, because we are bringing in the right players on top of all of that. So should be interesting, Dennis. I'm excited about it for the up-and-coming draft, but watching the college football playoff, love to see what Fernando Mendoza does, because if he shocks the world, then that's going to be way too rich to even pass up in the end of it. So I understand that wholeheartedly as well. Appreciate you for coming on by, Dennis. Happy New Year to you and your family. We'd love to see what 2026 has involved with the silver and black. And hopefully it's full of hopes and full of positivity and really good grit and grind and build for this silver and black organization. Appreciate you for coming on by, my friend. Take care of yourself and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you as well. Thanks so much for having me on. Greatly appreciate it.
Absolutely. You bet.